A man wearing worn-out boots, a faded jacket, and the tired expression of someone who had fought 1,000 silent battles stepped into a small-town diner with his 6-year-old daughter holding his hand. Before he could even finish reading the menu, the cashier looked him up and down with cold eyes, reached beneath the counter, and quietly pushed his money back toward him as if he didn't belong there. Around the room, several customers noticed. Some smiled awkwardly. Others looked away. What nobody inside that busy diner knew was that the exhausted single father standing before them wasn't a struggling customer at all. He was the secret owner of the restaurant, returning without warning after nearly 2 years away to discover what had become of the place he had built with his late wife. If you believe kindness can change lives, forgiveness heals broken hearts, hope should never die, and everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us of the good still waiting in this world. Colton Mercer had spent the last 18 months away from his hometown overseeing the expansion of a family-owned restaurant business that had grown far beyond anything he and his wife had once imagined. Years earlier, they had started with one tiny diner where every customer was greeted like family. Their dream was never about becoming wealthy. It was about creating a place where lonely people found comfort, hard-working families enjoyed affordable meals, and strangers left feeling like neighbors. But everything changed when his wife, Meredith, passed away after a sudden illness. Overnight, Colton became both a grieving husband and a devoted single father to little Nora, who suddenly needed all the love, strength, and stability he could give. Rather than sell the business, Colton buried his grief in work. He hired regional managers, trusted experienced supervisors, and traveled constantly while secretly visiting locations whenever possible. He believed the only way to honor Meredith's memory was to protect the values they had built together. Yet something inside him kept pulling him back toward the very first diner where it had all begun. Reports looked excellent on paper. Sales were climbing. Profits were strong. Customer traffic had increased every quarter. Everything appeared perfect. But numbers could never reveal the truth hiding behind smiles. That bright Saturday morning, Colton dressed in ordinary clothes that no one associated with a successful business owner. He skipped his expensive watch, left his luxury vehicle several blocks away, and walked hand in hand with Nora through the busy streets. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a stuffed rabbit that had once belonged to her mother. She smiled at every flower, every bird, and every passing dog. Her innocence softened the weight Colton carried every day. The diner looked beautiful from outside. Fresh paint covered the walls. The windows sparkled. Colorful flowers decorated the entrance. It looked exactly like the welcoming place Meredith had loved. Colton smiled with cautious optimism. Maybe everything truly was fine. The feeling disappeared within minutes of stepping inside. The atmosphere felt strangely different. Customers laughed, but employees looked tense. The smiles behind the counter appeared forced rather than genuine. Several workers avoided eye contact with one another. Instead of warmth, there was pressure. Instead of kindness, there was efficiency without compassion. When Colton quietly approached the register with Nora beside him, the cashier barely acknowledged them. Her name tag read Chelsea Harlow. She quickly judged the worn clothing, the scuffed boots, and the tired father standing before her. Before Colton could finish ordering, Chelsea sighed impatiently and assumed he couldn't afford lunch. Without asking questions, she spoke loudly enough for nearby customers to hear that this wasn't a charity and suggested they try the local shelter if money was a problem. The words landed like stones. Nora looked up at her father with confused eyes. She had never seen an adult treat someone that way. Colton felt anger rising inside him, but years of hardship had taught him that the strongest people often remain calm when emotions demand otherwise. He gently squeezed Nora's hand and simply thanked the cashier for her honesty. As he stepped aside, something unexpected happened. An elderly dishwasher named Graham, whose hands were rough from decades of honest work, quietly walked from the kitchen carrying an apron still dusted with flour. He looked at Colton for only a second before his eyes widened with disbelief. Graham had helped Colton build the very first kitchen years ago. Age had bent his back, but not his memory. Instead of exposing the owner's identity, Graham remained silent. He understood immediately why Colton had come dressed like an ordinary customer. The old man simply nodded respectfully before returning to work, saying nothing. Colton spent the next hour sitting quietly with Nora after eventually purchasing 2 inexpensive drinks from another employee who had shown basic courtesy. They watched everything. Servers rushed elderly guests who wanted extra time. A teenage employee was publicly embarrassed for accidentally dropping a spoon. One cook threw away perfectly good food instead of donating leftovers as Meredith had always insisted. Several customers quietly complained that employees seemed unfriendly compared with previous years. The biggest surprise came when Colton noticed a young waitress named Harper quietly paying for an elderly veteran's breakfast from her own tips after discovering he was a few dollars short. She smiled warmly without seeking recognition. The veteran never realized who had helped him. Colton noticed another employee secretly placing fresh fruit into a takeout bag for a struggling mother without charging her. Compassion still existed inside the diner. It simply survived quietly beneath fear. By afternoon, Colton had seen enough. He politely asked to speak with the general manager. The manager, Preston Doyle, confidently walked from his office believing another complaint had arrived. His expensive suit contrasted sharply with the exhausted employees surrounding him. He smiled politely at first but quickly became impatient when he saw Colton's appearance. Preston defended the staff before hearing a single concern. He explained that strict policies kept profits high and that emotional decisions weakened businesses. He proudly described how much revenue had increased since introducing tougher standards. He believed success could be measured only through financial reports. Colton listened carefully without interruption. Then he reached into his jacket and quietly placed a small leather notebook onto the counter. Inside rested the original business license signed years earlier. Beside it lay photographs of Meredith serving customers with joyful laughter. There were handwritten recipes, old newspaper articles, construction pictures. The first dollar ever earned. Finally, Colton removed a simple ownership document bearing his signature. Silence swept across the diner. Employees slowly gathered. Customers stopped eating. Preston's confident expression disappeared. Chelsea's face turned pale. The man everyone had dismissed because of his clothes was the founder whose family story decorated one entire wall of the restaurant. Nobody spoke. Colton finally broke the silence. He explained that businesses never fail because poor people walk through the front door. They fail when kindness walks out the back. He pointed toward the framed mission statement Meredith had written years earlier. Most employees had passed it every day without reading it anymore. It promised that every guest deserved dignity regardless of appearance, income, or circumstance. Then Colton quietly shared something few people knew. Years before opening the diner, he himself had once been turned away from another restaurant because he couldn't afford a full meal after losing his job. Meredith had split her only sandwich with him while sitting on a nearby bench. That single act of compassion had inspired the dream that eventually became their restaurant. Tears filled several eyes. Chelsea could barely breathe. Shame overwhelmed her. She realized she had judged not only the owner but every struggling customer who entered believing appearances revealed character. Instead of demanding her dismissal, Colton asked her one difficult question. He wondered when she had stopped seeing people and started seeing only wallets. Chelsea broke down completely. She admitted she had recently gone through a painful divorce. Financial pressure, exhaustion, and constant fear of missing sales targets had slowly hardened her heart. Preston rewarded numbers but criticized empathy, making employees believe compassion was weakness. One by one, workers began sharing similar stories. Fear had replaced pride. Stress had replaced teamwork. Nobody felt safe making kind decisions anymore. Harper quietly admitted she often paid for customers herself because she feared management would punish acts of generosity. Graham finally stepped forward. The elderly dishwasher gently reminded everyone that Meredith used to say the best meal people remembered wasn't always the most delicious one. It was the one served with respect. Those words settled deeply inside every heart in the room. Preston attempted to defend himself, insisting profits proved his methods worked. Colton calmly replied that profit without humanity was simply expensive failure. He announced immediate leadership changes. Preston was removed from management that afternoon. Not because sales had increased. Because trust had disappeared. Leadership, Colton explained, was measured by the number of people lifted up, not the number controlled. Chelsea expected to lose her job as well. Instead, Colton offered something she never imagined. He invited her to remain employed under one condition. She would spend the next several months learning directly from Graham and Harper about service rooted in dignity rather than judgment. She accepted through tears, promising never again to assume someone's worth based on clothing or appearance. Over the following weeks, the diner slowly transformed. Employees smiled naturally again. Leftover food reached local shelters every evening. Customers noticed genuine warmth returning. Suggestion boxes filled with appreciation instead of complaints. Staff meetings began celebrating acts of kindness alongside financial achievements. The atmosphere Meredith once dreamed about returned stronger than before. One sunny afternoon, an elderly man entered wearing worn-out clothes remarkably similar to those Colton had worn during his surprise visit. Before he even reached the register, Chelsea greeted him with a warm smile, patiently explained the menu, and treated him with complete respect. She never asked whether he could pay. She simply welcomed him as a valued guest. Across the room, Colton watched quietly while Nora happily colored pictures beside him. He smiled because the lesson had finally become reality. The diner had not been saved by money. It had been restored by compassion. As Nora slipped her tiny hand into her father's, she looked up and whispered that her mother would have loved seeing everyone smile again. Colton felt tears forming, but this time they carried gratitude rather than grief. Meredith's dream had survived because ordinary people chose kindness when it mattered most. Before this story comes to an end, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been judged by your appearance, or has someone shown you unexpected kindness when you needed it most? Please leave a meaningful comment sharing the lesson this story reminded you of. Your words might encourage someone who is quietly struggling today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that every stranger is fighting a battle we cannot see, every act of kindness plants a seed that may change a life forever, and sometimes the greatest test of our character is not how we treat important people, but how we treat those who have nothing to offer in return. In a world that often judges too quickly, choose compassion first, because one gentle moment can become the beginning of someone else's miracle.